and driver skill takes about 10% of the work. In the 2024 season, the top teams like Red Bull, McLaren, and Ferrari spent over thousands and thousands of hours in the wind tunnel testing to ensure that their car had the most optimal downforce and aero setting to be the most successful team. Hi, my name is Kumar, and today I'll be talking about the aero analysis of Formula One cars in my peer research project. Before I dive any deeper into my project, it's important to understand what aerodynamics is. And in its simple essence, it is the study of how air moves around solid objects. Formula One engineers describe this as the perfect balance between the invisible force known as downforce, which pushes the car down to the ground, and the resistive forces of lift and drag, and finding the perfect balance between the two, more of downforce, less of the drag, for continued team success across several seasons. Before diving into why Formula One especially is my focus of study, I want to look at how aerodynamics has played a part in different other facets of motorsports. To start with GT racing first, GT racing are basically beefed up versions of stock cars, which use their barge boards and the front wings to generate much of their downforce, if any. Unlike Formula One, their rear wings don't have much of a purpose rather than car stability. And in high-speed corners, their barges play the main role in maintaining stability. In NASCAR, aerodynamics has a completely different purpose, where its main focus is to prevent the cars being airborne. According to an FIA technical regulation report from 2018 to 2021, around 54% of the accidents that do occur in NASCAR are because of the cars being airborne. So in the 2024 season in NASCAR, they implemented much more aerodynamic measures to ensure that the cars are sticking more closely to the ground and not lifting up as often. Another facet of racing I looked at was the hypercar series, which is by far the most different form of competitive motorsport. Hypercar series take race in what we call endurance racing, meaning they take part in the 24-hour Nürburgring race and the 24-hour Sebring races, where each team has 3 drivers, which differentiate between different stints. And their aerodynamic is mainly to find the weight distribution between each driver and how they can optimize their performance on track. As you can see in this picture here, the BMP car has a rear wing while the Quaco car does not, meaning that they have a lot more freedom on how they want to analyze the aero packages in their vehicles. Now, one of the main reasons why Formula One is the focus of my study is how it's considered the pinnacle of motorsports and how everything is almost picture perfect. These Formula One cars have unmatched downforce and immense drag optimization in high-speed corners. This is a picture of the famous Cobb's Corner in the Silverstone track. And in previous generations of cars, this corner could not be taken flat out, but on the recent developments of the cars, this corner can be taken up to 290 to 300 kilometers per hour flat. And upon corner entry, the teams have minimized drag, and upon the exit from the corner, they have the maximum straight line speed leading up to zones further in the track, which require the same stability. Now, with the 2022 season, Formula One reintroduced its Venturi tunnels with the ground effect generation. And in a physics standpoint, the Venturi tunnels have 2 different zones, and the middle zone creates a brief pressure of high airflow, creating basically a suction cup between the two, generating high amounts of downforce, keeping the car stuck to the ground. As it's shown by the underside of the car here, this is the 2022 Ferrari model, and how it uses 2 Venturi tunnels on both the front wing and the rear wing, generating the maximum amount of downforce that the car can possibly do. Apart from the ground effect revival, Formula One cars also use something called as active aerodynamics, which is primarily seen in the DRS system. DRS is an overtaking benefiting tool that drivers have access to when they're behind 1 second of the car in front, allowing for the rear wing to activate, as you can see in this picture, allowing for up to 16 to 20 kilometers per hour more in the back straight for them to overtake the car, as compared to when DRS is closed, when their normal speed caps up to 320 kilometers per hour. Based on the existing literature I've studied in motorsports, there was a lot of inconsistencies between what the engineers and researchers were looking at. One of the main things was the isolated technical metrics. This is a study from McCabe et al. In 2005, where he was looking at the 2005 and 2009 cars and how the dirty air effect of the front axle affects the aerodynamics of the rear wing and how that impacts overall performance of the car. But his study mainly focused on two races in the 2005 and 2009 seasons, leading me to ask for, okay, what happened more? Like, what was the future implications? Who won the championship that year with regards to the aero data? Apart from that, the governing body of Formula One has also implemented a lot of cost caps on teams so that one team can possibly gain an advantage by overspending and outspending its competitors. And this led to the teams having inconsistencies between their wind tunnel testing and their simulation data, as mentioned by the Formula One Analysis Journal. Furthermore, there's also research and development changes that occurred throughout the season, throughout different tracks, even during the race as we progress. This is a picture of the 2021 Italian Grand Prix, where the green line initially shows the wing experiencing minimum downforce, and the blue line now shows what was in the high downforce area, and the green is showing how the wing is experiencing a bend, creating a difference of 6.7 degrees in the angle of the wing itself over the course of a couple laps. Based on these inconsistencies, I landed to my question: how do rear and front wing modifications correlate with competitor success in the 2024 Formula One season? My initial hypothesis is that teams that implement more refined changes in their front and rear wings have more success as it's measured by their sector times, the tire degradation, and how their wing issues between corners. The way I'm defining success in my study is consistent with qualifying appearances, especially in Q3. In Formula One, Q3 is each qualifying session is divided up into 3 different stages before the race. Q1 eliminates the 5 slowest drivers, Q2 the next 5 slowest drivers, and Q3 being the final zone where the 10 fastest drivers have the chance to set up their car on the almost optimum position for the race on Sunday. Which naturally leads me to my next metric, is on the finishing position of each drivers and teams based on podiums and top 10 finishes. The methodology I chose for my study is a quantitative aerodynamic content analysis. My main reason for choosing this research method is that teams guard their telemetry data. Since we're still in the last year of the ground effect generation of the cars from 2022 to 2025, the teams don't release their data because even past generation data, even though the teams experiment differently across seasons, that data is still very proprietary, and that causes their competitors to gain advantage over them if that data gets leaked somehow. So it was imperative for me to find a different way to get similar results for an aero analysis. Another reason for choosing this method is the proxy indicators that I'm able to employ during the race. I found myself observing the 2-hour races that occurred during much of the weeks, focusing on observable race day data as it's happening in real time with my coding sheet in hand. And another reason for choosing this research method is that I'm able to apply objective coding, reducing any personal biases that may happen, which can capture the varying trends I'm trying to focus on. As for my data collection, I quantified some of the metrics I was going to be measuring and put them in a Python program that I coded. As far as the front wing issues goes, I ranged it from 0 to 2, seeing how the wing bends upon high-speed entries and how it doesn't bend as much upon a low-speed entry on certain corners. For the rear wing behavior, I'm employing the same metric, accounting for one more position because of DRS, which will be focused on later on. From there, I'm also looking at sector time changes, plus and minus, depending on how it goes on each track, as well as overtaking attempts and the amount of tires that they degrade, depending on the course of the race. The way my data collection took place is that first I myself analyzed the race footage and coded what findings I found. To keep my findings consistent, to ensure that there was no personal biases involved, I selected a coding partner who would do a similar analysis of the race footage that I had done, and I found someone with a similar base knowledge as me on Formula One, and then I instructed them on what to look for on each race so that our analysis were on par. Then we discussed what we found, if there were any discrepancies among our studies, and we averaged most of our findings, and then we generated the data. Now for the results of the discussions. So what I found in this graph is on the top I have the team's outline, yellow being McLaren, red or orange being Red Bull, pink being the Ferrari, and the red Mercedes. What I found is that the McLaren and Red Bull wing are the most consistent with their front wing issues, making it look like they have the most stable front wing out of any other team. Ferrari being the only exception, as during the middle stint of the season, they had inconsistency between the rear wing performances. As for the front wing and okay, from those wing issues, we look at the sector times now, where Red Bull and McLaren are the only teams that are in the negative delta on their sector time, meaning that across each iteration of laps, their sector times are decreasing, meaning that they're getting faster and faster each lap as the conditions are changing on the track and they're able to optimize their downforce much more. So based on that conclusion, we found that McLaren had the lowest sector time delta with a negative 0.1 seconds, second only to Ferrari, and also having the lowest tire degradation with 0.45 on average, which was seen to be at par with Red Bull and Mercedes. And based on my conclusions, I was logically inclined to confirm that McLaren were the superior team in the 2024 season, and that's what happened in the 2024 Formula One Constructors Championship, where McLaren pulled out a first win in their constructors in 15 years, while finishing and Ferrari finished second with Red Bull third, coming after a more dominant 2023 season. McLaren's drivers, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, they had significant performance increase in each of the tracks they had on the latter part of the season, leading to their victory. Now, how my study can be used in the future. One of the main things I understood that my study was mainly a preliminary analysis of the Formula One ground effect revival. More computational fluid dynamic engagement from teams or even from lower modes of racing would have strengthened my conclusions. And my research mainly serves as a facet to something to start upon, a stepping stone of sorts. Employing a longitudinal approach across the 2022 seasons, the 23, and the current 2025 season will strengthen any analysis found on the ground effect revival of the cars. As for the 2025 season goes, there are already existing controversies that are emerging in the McLaren wing, as seen in this picture here. In the preseason testing in Bahrain, McLaren were found to be leading the front vector of the wing, causing an extra 750 Newton downforce on the end plate, causing it to lift up 0.5 millimeters to 0.75 millimeters. Now, although that might not seem as much of a difference, if you look at the first 5 races of the 2025 season, McLaren has won 4 out of the 5 races, posing dominant performances, Red Bull winning the only one in Japan. As it goes for Bahrain, McLaren pulled out an amazing victory, and even in Saudi Arabia yesterday. I want to leave with a quote from Enzo Ferrari, which sums up my project. Air is free, but in Formula One it costs millions of dollars and millions of euros across all facets. Those are my works cited. Thank you.
How did you determine which results generated by your research were most important in informing your new understanding?
So when I ran my data, I was like, okay, so the metrics I was looking at was to see what type of racing line the drivers were implementing to ensure that upon cornering speeds, what effect did that have? And upon reviewing more and more race footage, I found that the more important factors to determine for data collection was the bend in the front and rear wings, as well as how that affects the sector times for each team. So those were the metrics I ultimately decided to focus my research upon.
How did the limitations of your method or data influence your new understanding?
Going into my research, I knew that there was going to be some limitations, mainly because of the approach I had to take. I've read many papers of engineers, especially McKay et al., where he employed a computational fluid dynamic approach. And going into my project, having the models of the wings itself that the teams employed, or even the floor categories of racing would have involved much more into how it's going to impact the future of racing. And so I feel like having those models for me would have been helpful, and it does inform me my limitations.
What was the most important research skill you developed as a result of this process, and how might you apply it to your future endeavors?
The main part would be the amount of, in a short time, the volume of race footage I had to go through and the volume of data I had to collect. Like I mentioned before, each race takes approximately an hour and 30 minutes to an hour and 45. So it was imperative for me to look at which parts to look at and which parts to exclude. And ultimately, I spent about an hour on each race to look at, okay, which metrics am I going to include and which I have to exclude. So from a research standpoint, I probably gained effectiveness and efficiency on how to handle large loads of data in a rather short amount of time.